Documentation is really very important for the APIs. Let's say you are a backend developer who is writing the APIs every other day, and you wanted to share your APIs with a front-end developer. And what are the options which you have? I mean, one option which you can have is you share the Postman offline collection with your front-end developer, but that will become outdated as soon as you push the new version of the APIs to the environment. So here we can use Swagger, which is actually a module which exposes the API spec, open API spec through the NestJS APIs. So, I mean, we are building REST APIs, and with this Swagger UI module, we can expose the open API spec on a particular endpoint. So on real time, you can do all the changes, and all the changes will be deployed on real time to that endpoint. And the front end or the integration team can look at that endpoint / documentation or docs, and they will get the Swagger spec updated every other time. So let's talk about how you can expose the REST APIs through the Swagger module, how to configure Swagger module, and how we can, what all different things which you can use using the different annotations which NestJS Swagger module provides. So setting up Swagger is easy. हमें कुछ नहीं करना, NestJS Swagger module install करना, and there is another module, I think Swagger UI Express. These two modules you need. Just get them installed, and then we will start working on the Swagger folder. So in this source folder, I will create a Swagger folder, and then I will write Swagger config or things related to Swagger. Okay, so we'll work on the Swagger folder. Here I have created a swagger.config.ts. So Swagger API spec is nothing but exposing your APIs in the open API spec. It's nothing but it's a JSON or YML format which is exposed on a particular endpoint. If you have done the Swagger, I mean how to expose a Swagger API spec on the using Express TypeScript, what you do is you create a, अपन क्या करते हैं, YML file बनाते हैं और JSON or either JSON file बनाते हैं. And it also uses the same Swagger UI Express module, like app.use on this particular route, use Swagger UI Express module, and in Swagger UI Express we pass this the whole JSON or YML file. And what it does is एक endpoint देता है, एक endpoint पे आपको Swagger YML को expose करके return करके देता है. Same thing we are doing in the NestJS. We are going to create a, but एक important चीज़ है कि in NestJS it automatically builds. Same thing if you have to do in the Express, you have to write YML file or keep updating a JSON file. Here I don't need to use anything. I just need to write basic annotations in the controller, or I just need to register this Swagger with my NestJS application. Rest it automatically does, or adding the new APIs, updating the body, updating a query parameter, path parameter, whatever you keep writing in the code, automatically it gets reflected in your Swagger. So Swagger is nothing but your API representation in the open API spec. तो हम Swagger config और Swagger interface, that is nothing but इस Swagger में top में title क्या होगा, okay, what microservice name, what microservice does, what is the microservice version name, basic thing, and then here we are going to build the document, Swagger document, which is going to use NestJS application. So it's an export function, create document. It will take application, NestJS application instance, because we need to register this Swagger document on the app instance. So we need to create a builder, new document builder, that is coming from the NestJS Swagger. Or here we can set the title, like okay, जो भी Swagger doc होगा उसका title क्या होगा, description क्या होगा. All these methods you can see, add title, add description, add bearer oath, all these options are there. So we will just first we'll do the set title, set description. Set title we can get from the Swagger config.title, Swagger config.description. So after title and description we have add bearer oath, because what happens is Swagger documentation is fine, अपन को UI पे Swagger UI मिल जाएगा, but then through Swagger UI we will also can provide a way to pass the authorization header. तो वो हम यहाँ पे कर रहे हैं, add bearer oath. And inside this we can pass couple of options inside an object. Okay, what is the type? Type is a HTTP, and schema is a bearer, I guess, because we are going to pass a bearer token in the authorization header. This is the authorization format GWT. and couple of argument and couple of options, and the value, attribute value name through which it will be sent is authorization. The basic builder document bana diya humne, and now after that what we need to do, we need to create a document, set version, like which version, API version is swagger config.version, and after that we will be just creating. So this is the builder. Now we need to build the builder.build. I think that is the method we are going to use. So this is swagger config with the tags, title, description and all. Now we can do is, this is a particular document. Here we still need to use the app instance. How we can use that? So const document equal to swagger module dot, I think the create document, and inside create document we need to pass app and options object, app options. So we can just create option equal to builder.build. It will give us the options. Okay, and then we can just do swagger module dot setup. So here we are setting up a particular endpoint for this document. So we are passing app instance and this document. That's it. So just use this. I mean, call this create document method in the main.ts file and have your API exposed. I mean, all your REST API is exposed on Swagger doc. I mean, this is the minimal thing we are doing, and the rest automatically it will take care of exposing the APIs. You can see here, nice and clean. So these are different endpoints we have, right? Health, task, API v1 task, API v1 task, post, get. So documentation is nothing but a developer will see it and they will try to understand, okay, what should be the type ID, what will be the payload for creating new tasks. All those things we should be able to populate. So we need to just spend some more additional efforts. I mean, it's not the proper documentation. If you see ID, I don't know the type of ID. I also don't know about the API v1 task, HTTP post, what will be the payload format. All those things we can do in the using DTOs. So in the DTO we can use some special annotations, and this is a particular format. Like when you click on authorize button, using this button, this pop-up, you can send authorization header. So now let's see that in the code how we can add more, because Swagger documentation is easy, but then we need to use special annotations to put more information in our Swagger documentation. So here we are using this, let's say this HTTP create DTO. Here I can use API property, at the API property that is coming from Swagger. So API property means it will expose this inside a request body parameter, because this is a Swagger annotation. Without it also fine, but when you are using it, then inside your Swagger documentation you should be able to see that in the create task API that these are the parameters: name, descriptions and ID, which is optional. So what all required and what all optional, you can specify in name, required and example. So you can also specify the example values. So whoever is using this API spec will understand, okay, this is the format, this is the example, this is how you need to pass the payload. I reload the page now and I should be able to see everything. Inside post you can see the payload body is now being shown with the schema. Okay, name, description, ID, both are of type string. All these validations we can do now. So this is create task DTO. Similarly, we can also add further validations. We can also add an API tag. So in the API tag, and this is API bearer auth. This is also Swagger annotation. So similarly, use guard, we are like already using auth guard. So you can actually register this auth guard at a controller level also, that we have discussed, that either you can register it at a global or at a controller level or at a router level, right? So you can also set API tags. So Swagger will segregate these APIs. Otherwise, Swagger will put all the APIs in a one common global tag, tasks APIs. And now when you restart the application, you will see that inside tasks API, you will see only the task, create, update, delete, all these APIs. All these additional annotations which you need to use is API consume, API OK, error messages. So what is the error message? Because sometimes an API can expose different error messages, like, okay, 500 status error code. In documentation, we need to also explain, also showcase, okay, what all HTTP status code this API can return: not found 404, 500, 401, 403, unprocessable entity exceptions. Or what if the API is successful? So API OK message, API OK response, right? API OK property. So these annotations you can use to expose more information on Swagger side. So when you are doing this, and you can also specify the type. Okay, what should be the response type while fetching up the task, while creating the task. And now if I reload this, so this is created a new tag, inside tag, these are the APIs, and this API can return these different status code. I mean, this is all about documentation, and you can do it maturely. I mean, whatever the documentation, whatever the rich documentation looks like, you can add everything. तो ये Swagger के अंदर ये सब कुछ होता है. You can use these annotation, HTTP code, API consume, application JSON, and this is how you can also use response DTO. What response DTO sometimes क्या होता है कि हम API spec दे रहे हैं डेवलपर को, फ्रंट एंड डेवलपर को. So we also need to tell these are the response properties you will get while you are doing a list by ID, or give me the list, all the list, array of object, get task by ID, that will be an object, but give me the list, that will be array of object, and what all properties it will contain, that you need to expose in the API spec. So for that we will create these response DTOs, like list response DTO, और वो आप इस तरह OK types में specify कर सकते हो. API OK response, description and type. So this type will be exposed, and you can see here, this is really interesting to create nice and clean and mature documentation. So here from this API spec, I know, okay, when I hit API v1 task, I will be getting the array of object containing the name and description. So this same is true for any complex APIs we are building. So this is all about how you can build the Swagger documentation for your APIs.